the reality is the commitment to AUKUS that was signed up to by Boris Johnson, renewed by Rishi Sunak, ratified by Keir Starmer, is enormously important. And if if Andy and Wes are actually determined to do it, well, great, I look forward to it. But at the moment, all we've got is a repeat of announcements that were made a few months ago. That's not quite the same as a commitment.
Now, Labour's Defence Secretary Wes Streeting echoed the Prime Minister by telling us 40 minutes ago here on the programme that the UK would meet its target of spending 3.5% of national income on defence by 2035. But the question, of course, is how do we get there? Wes Streeting wouldn't commit to spending 3% by 2030. Now, when his predecessor John Healey resigned, he wrote that in his letter to the Prime Minister,
I am certain that a headmark date for 3% of GDP on defence in 2030 is what Britain must set.
So should the new Chancellor, John Healey, listen to what John Healey said in his resignation letter and set that 2030 target? The Conservative Tom Tugendhat and former Security Minister joins us now. Very good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, Salma. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for being with us this morning. The Prime Minister said that he would meet a longer-term NATO target to spend 3.5% on core defence spending by 2035. Are you satisfied with that?
Well, that's not really a surprise, is it? I mean, the government promised to do that a number of years ago. Keir Starmer promised to do it. So that's just a repeat. And in fact, the £8 billion is a repeat as well, which I welcome. I mean, it's great that they've recommitted to AUKUS. But as John Healey told John Healey, you've got to get to the 3%. Otherwise, you're not really living up to the commitment. And, let's not pretend this is just about our defence, as in the protection of the United Kingdom, as important as that is. We're already seeing drone attacks reaching beyond Ukraine into places like Poland and so on. But it's also about jobs. It's about apprenticeships in the UK. It's about entrepreneurs being able to come up with ideas and technology. And it's about standing by our allies. People like the Poles, people like the Swedes, people like the Estonians are beginning to notice that we're not quite living up to the promises that we've made.
Well, just on that point about creating jobs, that was something that the Defence Secretary really iterated here on the programme this morning, saying that it is about reindustrialising. It is about making sure that there's apprenticeships for young people. That also ties in with the government commitment to getting more young people into work. He did very much stress that. It does seem that the commitment is there. Are you happy with that commitment, that part of this defence strategy is going to be creating industry and jobs here in the UK?
Well, look, I'm delighted that Wes is saying that. He's been a friend of mine for 10 years, so I don't want to be too rude about him. But he's been in post for about 10 minutes. And let's see what this actually ends up meaning. In the last government, we saw the investment in Govan and Rosyth, and we saw the commitment to rebuilding the Royal Navy. We saw investment going into BAE and Babcock and to others. And so I hope that what they're going to do is make sure that Barrow-in-Furness is invested in and that we have the nuclear deterrent. Because the reality is the commitment to AUKUS that was signed up to by Boris Johnson, renewed by Rishi Sunak, ratified by Keir Starmer, is enormously important. And if Andy and Wes are actually determined to do it, well, great, I look forward to it. But at the moment, all we've got is a repeat of announcements that were made a few months ago. That's not quite the same as a commitment.
No, you're right about that. It's not the same. But just looking at defence spending, which I think is important, because we're talking about what the government has just announced, but obviously nothing exists in isolation. We're here because of former governments, and the data shows us that actually spending for defence fell by 22% between, I think it's 2009, 2010 and 2016/2017 from 16...
You can go longer. You can go longer. It started in 1995 and it drops precipitously. The reality is we all took, frankly, our eye off the ball when the Cold War ended, when the Berlin Wall came down, and we all took what was called the peace dividend. Now, I gave a very long speech, which I'm sure you've read, listened to, and internally digested.
100%.
Exactly. At Policy Exchange a few weeks ago, where I sort of set out one of the major problems, which is that we just didn't maintain the commitment. Now, the problem is countries like Finland that never believed that Russia had changed, that maintained their reserve forces, maintained their defence industry, are now in a much stronger position in various different ways, not just in terms of resisting Russian pressure and Russian aggression, and we're seeing that in terms of disinformation and in terms of the assassinations that we've seen here in the UK, but they're also in a better position in terms of innovation because they're seeing their defence industries innovating. So you're absolutely right. Every government for 30 years has got this wrong. You know, we turned around the shipbuilding in far too late. I mean, I'll agree with you there, but we turned it around in 2016, I think it was 13 maybe, when we ordered the first frigates and destroyers in about 15, 20 years. None had been ordered since the mid-90s. You know, it's a really serious problem that every government has got to.
Just to your point, the fact that every government has taken their eye off the ball, and this really is something that has to be bipartisan. It has to be connected across parties. Is there a political will from the Conservatives to work in tandem with Labour at the minute to make sure that the defence is turned around the way you said it needs to be?
Absolutely. Just listen to what James Cartledge is saying and listen to what Kemi Badenoch is saying. I mean, both of them are absolutely committed to getting Britain back on the right footing here. Now, that's where, you know, there are difficult decisions to be made. And we've offered up already one of the difficult decisions, and I'm not pretending it's easy, but I do think it's right, is on reversing that easing of the two-child benefit cap. Now, that frees up billions of pounds in the long term. Now, the reality is we've got a choice, don't we? We've got a choice, and the choice is pretty simple. It's do we tax more or do we somehow or rather reduce government spending? And what we're trying to do is to make sure that this country is safe in the long term. We're investing in young people through apprenticeships, and I'm very glad to hear Wes Streeting speaking that kind of language. Now let's see whether he lives up to it. OK,
Tom, while I've got you here, can I just ask you quickly, what's your assessment on the Iran conflict? It's been reported that governments around the world are pretty much expecting the war to drag on, possibly for months. Every time we feel there's a resolution, it then flares up again. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's largely right. Look, I mean, I don't know if you read the Memorandum of Understanding, but it was a particularly depressing read if you, like me, believe that international seaways are supposed to be open to navigation. I mean, if you don't, then you've got real challenges going on with the Mediterranean choke points, with the Suez Canal choke points and so on. So I hope you do. Because what the Memorandum of Understanding said was that for 6 months that applies, then afterwards it's up for debate. Well, the Iranian government has been trying to get that up for debate for the best part of 200 years because what they want to do, quite understandably, is control the Strait of Hormuz, to control the passage of ships and energy through that strait. Now, I'm afraid what the recent action has done is reopen that question, and the Iranian government is firing the odd rocket, the odd drone, the odd missile over to make that very difficult. And now they've just reawakened their Houthi proxies in Yemen. We're seeing the same happening in the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, which effectively closes off the Suez Canal because it closes off the southern end of the Red Sea. So all this is very concerning.
Tom Tugendhat, I really appreciate your time and your insights this morning. Thank you for joining us.